Hi, Jeff Mosley with Gregos Graphics. Today's installment of Tips and Tricks will cover the most often overlooked aspect of making a guitar strap. Okay, when people make guitar straps, I see some beautiful work. I see some guitar straps that are otherwise very functional, but the thing I see happen the most is that when they punch the holes that are supposed to attach the strap to the guitar, they sometimes don't have quite the right approach. And that's how I wanted to cover, that's what I wanted to cover in this video today. So I have this little mock-up I did of 4 types of guitar strap attachment methods. This is your standard one. Okay, this one just slips on. The next 2 are strap locks. This is called a Dunlop style, and this one you push and you pull it straight off, and then you push it back on and it locks in place. It can't come off. This is a Schaller style. This one has a pin that you pull up and it comes off, and then you slide it back on. This is kind of nice because you just slide it on and it locks in place. It's very, very sturdy. They're not coming off. And I can tell you from experience, being on stage without a strap lock, I've seen guitars come off, hit the ground, break the headstock right off of it, especially if it's a certain type of guitar I won't name. This is the 4th type, and this involves the type of in-pin jack found on acoustic guitars that have onboard pickups, and this is called a strap jack, and it requires a larger hole. It's similar to the first one, but this one requires a little larger hole to slip over because that's a really fat strap button, and then that just slides over like that, and it locks on perfectly. The way I do this, and I'll have you come a little closer with that, is it's sort of like a keyhole. There's the larger hole, and there's the slit, and then there's a smaller hole. The reason I punch the small hole is so that the leather will not continue tearing over time. I got this idea from watching drummers who would break their cymbals, and they'd have a crack in it, and they would drill a hole right at the end of the crack. And I asked them why they did that. And they said, well, it's because it won't continue cracking. It won't go past that hole. So a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. I'm sure I didn't come up with that concept, but it made sense. So then your standard strap button holes are going to look like this. Okay. Now, if your customer says, well, I'm using strap locks, then you don't need to punch the smaller hole or the slit. You just punch one single hole to match the diameter that you need to slip the strap lock through it. It's a much cleaner look, and also there's no chance of that ever working its way through. Okay? And this is a guitar strap I made years ago, and I use this kind of as a sample. And this has a standard strap button hole. And the distance between the large hole and the little one is carefully considered. It's designed to give the maximum ease to slide over the strap button, but it also keeps the strap button from pulling through. You don't want it so long that it doesn't get enough grip on the strap button. The hole the size that I used is designed to slip over the strap button and then lock around it. These are all, again, very carefully considered. The standard sizes that I use are, for the standard strap button, I use a number 13 Osborne punch, and that is also equivalent to a 1/32 punch. For the Dunlop strap locks, I use a 14, which is a 3/8 punch. For the Schallers, I use a number 15, or it's a 13/32 punch. And then for the strapjack style, I use a number 16, or a 7/16 punch. And anyway, I'm going to take a trip over to my carving bench, and I'm going to show you basically how I do the strap button. And I'll join you back in a second. Welcome back. Okay, we're at my bench, and I have a bunch of things in front of me here. I have my Osborne punches in the sizes that we discussed, 13 through 16. And I have a piece, this is a guitar strap adjustment section that I'm going to be punching the holes in. And I have the hole that's in here now. I use that to hang the strap with when I'm dyeing it and finishing it, so that I have a place on my wall that I hang it up, and so that's why that's there. It also gives me a place to center the punch over. So basically, what I do is I just happen to have these templates that I make. This is like a complete set of templates for making a guitar strap, and they're in different styles. This is your V taper. This is what I call a Western taper, and then this is the back piece that shows where the slot is for the adjustment section. And that's what we're dealing with here. This is the piece for the adjustment section, and on this end there's two holes that mark the distance between the center of the large hole and the center of the small hole. Okay. And then there's places, and I use a really fine tipped awl to mark these with. And so what I'm going to do, and this is where we're going to try to get a close-up here, is I'm going to place the template over here lined up as perfectly as I can get it. And then I'm going to mark where the back hole is. And I already have the center hole done, so I'll mark where the back hole is. And now you can see I have a mark, okay? That's where the center of the small hole is going to be. All right. Now, one thing I always do is I've got this little straight edge, and these are OmniGrids, and I've got these in all different sizes. These are actually used by quilters, and they are fantastic for using with leatherwork, especially if you need to cut rectangles and squares. So let's see. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this straight edge, and maybe I'll have you come around, and I'm going to connect these two. I'm just going to draw a scribe line. I'm going to connect those two. Okay. Now I've made a tool to help me punch the slit here. And the reason I made this tool, this is just a piece of cold rolled steel I found at Lowe's, and I just made just a cutting blade out of it. And it's not hard or anything. It's not designed. It's just for doing this. The reason I did this is I used to do that with an X-Acto knife or something, and I was always scared to death that I was eventually going to go and slip and cut right through and ruin all that work, especially on the other end of the strap where all the carving and stuff is. So I thought, well, how can I get around that? So I made that. It was very easy. I think this is about 1 1/4 inches, which is the perfect distance. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to punch we're going to do a standard strap button. So we're going to punch a number 13 hole, and I just kind of lay it over it, and I just press and wiggle around until it's perfectly centered over that hole. And if you see something that's slightly out of alignment, I'm not wearing my glasses right now, so I can't see. So anyway, this is a nice rawhide maul. It's about a 3-pounder. And incidentally, when people call me and ask me what to use for their maker stamps, this guy, it works really well. Rawhide is a wonderful material. It doesn't get bounce. It absorbs some of the impact, so it's similar to a dead blow, and it works beautifully. But anyway, I punch the large hole, okay, and then I use this guy, and I rotate it around to the punch that I like to use, and you can tell I like to use it because it's well worn. And then I'll go ahead and punch the small hole. And again, I can't see it. So. All right, so there it is. Now I'm going to take my strap punch and I'm going to join the two together. Okay, I'm just going to lay that in there, and I'm going to find that marking that I made, and I'm going to lay that in. I'm going to be very careful not to nick either of the outside edges of those holes. And do that, and it creates a really nice, professional looking cut. Okay, that's a standard strap button hole. Now, these are the samples I showed you earlier, and I took the strap buttons out. Typically, this is the Dunlop one, okay? So I would just punch the number 14 hole, and then when you get a Dunlop kit, it's going to look like this. It's going to have this little flange. It's going to have this piece that fits in the flange like that. And then this is going to go through that hole, okay? And then you have a washer that goes on the back. And then you have one of these little clip rings that goes like that, and then you squeeze it down and it'll attach to it. You can use pliers, you can use a screwdriver. Pliers I find are the little safer because you can just press them in place, but you want to be careful not to scratch or mar them. I'll see if I can just get it on with the screwdriver. Okay, so there it is. And that's the Dunlop style. All right, the next one is the Schaller strap lock. And this is comprised of 3 pieces. You've got the lock itself, you've got a washer, and then you have a nut. And this is going to require the number 15 punch. And so you put that from the back side because you want the finished side of the strap facing the audience. So this is the side that goes to the guitar, and basically it's a horseshoe shape, and you want it so that it's aligned like this because it's going to be basically pulling like this. It's going to be pulling down. Okay, so you get that like that. Put the washer on, and now I got to give you a little trick that is one of those things I like to call a life trick. When I was teaching an airbrush class in Phoenix, I was teaching how to disassemble and clean airbrushes, and airbrushes have extremely fine threads. It's super easy to cross thread them, and if you do that, you're in trouble. And somebody told me years ago, I think he might have been a machinist or something, somebody that was way smarter than me at that time in my life, said that when you're putting anything threaded together, turn it backwards first, okay? And so when I put the nut on, instead of just immediately try to start tightening it, turn it backwards and it'll make a clicking noise. Yeah, so one time it's not going to work. There it goes. And then you can start turning it. This works for light bulbs, it works for nuts and bolts, it works for just anything that's threaded. Just turn it backwards and it'll click, and then start turning it. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to thread very easily. And that's really handy with airbrushes because of the fine threads. You don't want to cross thread those. And then I take a socket, and you can just hand tighten it. You don't want to get it too tight. If you need to really crank down, you can, but you can do that. One thing that I have found that's helpful is these can sometimes work their way loose, and I use Loctite to just put a tiny little bit on the threads, and then put the nut on it, tighten it up, and that way it won't come loose. Okay. And you can see with the strap lock styles, I did not punch the relief slit or the small hole. You get a much cleaner look. But you have to know in advance that the customer's using strap locks, and you have to know what brand. So this is the Schaller style, and you can tell it because it's got a button that you pull up, okay? And this is the Dunlop style, and this has a button that you push down to release it. Okay? Well, that's it. That's my tips and tricks video on punching strap button holes for guitar straps. And hopefully the next strap you make, it will fit perfectly and will keep fitting perfectly for years to come. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one. Well, I hope you all found that informative. And the next tips and tricks video will be coming soon. So you all stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.